So I'm going to talk today about a piece of work which is related to essentially variational encoders on particle filters. So basically, I imagine that a lot of you in the audience are familiar with variational encoders, which have become very, very popular in machine learning over the past, say, 6-7 years now. People have been trying to extend this type of ideas to time series more recently. Unfortunately, what I'll show is that although there's been quite a few attempts to develop efficient variational autoencoder for time series, they haven't been quite successful. That those problems that appears when you're trying to develop autoencoders for time series are also problems that appear much earlier in the statistic community, which are related to the fact that essentially when you're trying to do inference for time series using modern kind of inference techniques, those techniques are not differentiable. So what I'll try to do is to basically put things in context. I will start reviewing how one perform inference for standard latent variable model, deep latent variable model. And I explain how it works in this simple context, and I will then show the limitation of basically trying to do the same thing with time series, that there are a few difficulties that appears, and then we will try to resolve them using tools from optimal transport. Okay, so this is joint work with Adrien Corenflot, who is a PhD student at Aalto University under the supervision of Simo Sarka. James Thornton, who is doing his PhD under my supervision of George Ioannidis in Oxford, on George Ioannidis, who is actually associate professor in my department. Okay, so to start with, I say we're going to start just reviewing how one perform inference for standard simple latent variable model. Okay, so assume you have a collection of observation x1, x2, x capital T, which are assumed independent. Okay. What you're interested in, you're going to interested to develop some latent variable representation for this observation. So the simplest thing you can do is that you associate to each observation xt a latent variable zt, and you model the joint distribution of this latent and the observation according to some joint distribution p theta zx. Okay, which you could factorize of the form nu theta z, which is essentially, if you want the prior distribution on the latent variable, and then the conditional likelihood of the observation given z, which is be denoted g theta. So this is extremely standard model. So in statistics, is known as random effect model. And if you're in machine learning, you might know that as a deep latent variable model. So in particular, if you assume that nu theta z is a simple like multivariate standard normal, and g theta is some kind of likelihood which is parametrized, which is a Gaussian parametrized by some neural net, then you obtain the so-called variational autoencoder that was popularized by Kingma and Welling. Okay, so that's the kind of model we're going to deal with to start with, to introduce the concept. So the question is now, I give you only a collection of observation, okay, and you want to do inference for this model. So to start with, assume if you knew the parameter theta, if you basically wanted to do inference, learn about the latent variable zt given the observation, well, the posterior distribution of zt given all the observation is simply the posterior distribution of zt given xt, because I've assumed essentially that the observations are independent, and it simply satisfies this expression, which is just base rule. Okay, so the posterior distribution of zt given xt is just a normalized joint distribution, so divided by the marginal distribution of xt, which unfortunately itself is given by the integral of the joint of a zt. Okay, so that's the expression of the posterior. But when you're going to deal with complicated model, this posterior is never tractable. You don't have an analytical expression for it, unfortunately. Okay. Moreover, well, in practice, you're not given the parameter theta. So what you want to do in the context of variational time coder is that I give you a lot of data observation, and you want to learn some kind of latent representation. So in particular, what you're interested in is learning the parameter theta of your neural net that parameterize the conditional distribution of the response x given the latent z. Okay, so if what you like to be able to do is to learn theta, I simply maximize the log likelihood function. Okay. So it's a sum of the capital T data that are available of obviously log of p theta xt. But what the problem is numerically, I told you already, this kind of marginal likelihood term is given by an intractable function. So it's problematic whenever you want to learn basically parameters or infer the latent variable for this kind of very simple latent variable model where you have numerical issues. Okay, so we're going to see different communities address those issues. Okay, so the main idea that is used recurrently, whether it's in statistics, econometrics, or machine learning, is that it's very, very, very basic. It tells you, well, you don't have access to this kind of likelihood of the observation. You don't have access to this kind of posterior distribution. Let's use some kind of Monte Carlo ideas to approximate them. Okay. So I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm going to just basically propose to approximate the posterior distribution of the latent on the corresponding marginal likelihood term using a simple importance sampling approximation. Okay, so I'm sure that most of you are familiar with importance sampling, but I just recap the concept. So importance sampling is based on a simple change of measure identity. So you're going to introduce some kind of probability density Q phi Z. It can depend on X, but I don't emphasize it notationally. And you build it so that it's easy to sample from. So think of it that it could be simply a normal of mean on covariance parameterized by some neural net of parameter phi. Okay, and then you say, well, okay, I'm going to rewrite the intractable integral I was interested in. That is the integral of p theta xz of a z. I rewrite it basically in this form. I've just basically said that, well, you know what, p theta xz is simply p theta xz divided by q phi z multiplied by q phi z. Okay, so that gives you this identity. I do the same for the posterior distribution. So this is, you have this kind of simple identity that holds whenever the support of q phi z includes the support of the joint density. Okay. And what you do once you have this simple identity, you use this kind of Monte Carlo approximation. So you sample n times from this easy to sample importance density Q phi. This is the way we call it, importance density. From there, that gives you a Monte Carlo approximation of this distribution. That's just simply an empirical measure. And you plug this empirical measure in the expression above, in this expression, on this expression. So that gives you simply an approximation of the intractable likelihood term as an average of those weights, which are known as importance weight, which are the ratio between the joint on the importance density, on an approximation of the posterior distribution of interest as some kind of weighted empirical measure on the weight, basically as simply proportional to the importance weight W theta phi Zi, and they sum to 1. Okay, so that's really this key idea will appear everywhere. So you have this kind of intractable integral, intractable target distribution, just use some kind of Monte Carlo approximation so as to approximate those quantities. Okay, so you do that. So this was done here for a generic observation X. Okay, remember that in practice, what I'm given is I'm given a set of observation X1, X2, Xt. Okay, so, well, when you want to approximate your log likelihood function, which is the sum of the log p theta xt, so the at here should be here, so I don't know what's happening. But anyway, so the log likelihood is obviously the sum of the log of p theta of xt. So you approximate each term using your importance sampling approximation, and that gives you some kind of Monte Carlo approximation of the log likelihood. know, and it's easy to see by simply using the law of large number that as n goes to infinity, the number of your Monte Carlo method is getting better, and this thing is a consistent estimate of the log likelihood. So can you use that to do essentially learn the parameter theta? Okay. So one thing that is really privileged in stats is to say, well, what about putting some kind of prior on the unknown parameter theta, call it p theta, and try to approximate the posterior distribution of theta given the whole set of observation, which is obviously proportional to prior time likelihood. Okay, and because I don't have access to the true likelihood, well, I'm going to plug instead my approximate likelihood. Okay, so you can do that. And surprisingly, it turns out that this algorithm that use approximate, which use essentially an approximation of the likelihood, still converge to the true exact posterior distribution. So it's kind of well known. It generated a lot of interest in statistics, but it's also very computationally expensive. So that's not a method that scales. And people don't really want to do that because essentially, if you have t data, you need to use the number of Monte Carlo n that is of order t. So as for your algorithm to work well, so it gives you complexity of order t square is far too expensive. Okay. Another thing which is cheaper, which is to say, let's not be Bayesian about theta. Just let's say try to essentially maximize this kind of approximation of the likelihood function. So what you're doing is simple. You take your approximation of the likelihood function. And this is obtained obviously using some kind of a Monte Carlo sample from Z from Q phi, and you say, well, okay, this Monte Carlo sample that I've generated using this kind of importance distribution Q phi, well, in most scenario, you know what? Simulating from Q phi, it can be essentially achieved by using some kind of standard normal random variable on passing them through some kind of continuously differentiable mapping, which is parameterized by phi, on obtaining sample from Q phi. So if I fix this kind of initial, say, normal random variable that I use later on to sample my variable from Q phi, where what do I obtain? So this is equivalent to work with common random number, or if you want a fixed random seed. That's going to give me a continuously differentiable approximation of the log likelihood function. Okay, so essentially you sample once for all your kind of standard random variable. Okay, from there, by just using some kind of continuously differentiable mapping parameterized by phi, you can obtain sample from the importance distribution. So you can approximate the likelihood function wherever you want at any point, and then you maximize the resulting approximate likelihood surface. Okay, so it's a well-known thing in econometrics in particular, and it scales better than what is done in statistics. Essentially, as soon as you have n that is of order at least root t, you can have the estimate that maximize this simulated likelihood function, if you want, is not only consistent, but it's also efficient. It's as good as if you were having the true log likelihood. So that's nice, okay, but still too expensive. Think that when you're trying to use some kind of VAE for celeb or whatever, CIFAR10, you have like enormous number of data. So you would like a method that scales better, on in particular for which you could do some kind of mini batching. Okay, so one thing people have been doing in machine learning is that they say, well, I'm not going to try to maximize the likelihood. It's too complicated. I'm not going to try to maximize this kind of simulated likelihood. I'm just going to maximize instead an ELBO, an evidence lower bound. Okay, so the evidence lower bound is defined as the expectation of my approximation of the log likelihood function. Okay, so the log likelihood function depends on this important sample Z1, Z2, Zn. Okay, and you take the expectation of your approximation of the log likelihood, and by a simple application of Jensen inequality, you know that this thing is inferior to the true log likelihood. So this is something that is being used recurrently in machine learning. So if you have n equal 1, if you were just approximating the log likelihood for essentially using one Monte Carlo sample at each time for each data point, then you're back to standard variational inference. And if you use more than one Monte Carlo sample to do your Monte Carlo approximation, you have something that is very popular in machine learning, which is known as the importance-weighted autoencoder. And why this method is actually quite nice is if you use more Monte Carlo sample, you've got a more faithful approximation of the log likelihood as expected, and your evidence lower bound is tighter. So this is a lower bound still on the true log likelihood, but the difference between this lower bound on the true log likelihood goes to 0 as n goes to infinity. So this is actually how all those techniques relate. Okay. So I apologize. There's a problem with the slides because the at appears all the at on my estimator are all misplaced, so I don't know what happened. It doesn't appear on my slide at home, so apologies for that. Okay, so this thing is just a review of what happened when you're trying to do inference for simple latent variable model. Okay, so this method, I found thousands of applications. In particular, for example, this kind of importance-weighted autoencoder is appeared in 2015 as already 600 or 700 citations and is used absolutely everywhere. Okay, now let's move to a more difficult scenario. So for the time being, I've assumed that I had access to independent observation and I was using this very simple latent variable model. So I was having independent latent variable, and they were all modeled basically by something like p theta z t x t. Now I assume that the observations are dependent, time dependent. So they're correlated over time. So I cannot use obviously such a simple model. So the way I'm going to model that is essentially by assuming that the latent variable associated to each observation xt, zt, but these latent variables are not independent, but they follow a Markov process. Okay, so they follow a Markov process. So Z1 is distributed according to some kind of transition density nu theta, and it has a Markov transition density f theta. Okay, so that's the kind of, now I've got a Markov structure on the latent variable. Okay, on conditional upon those latent variables, but xt given is distributed according to g theta xt zt. Okay, so it looks very, very similar to what I had before, except that now I have a time dependency between zt and zt minus 1. So this kind of models are ubiquitous in applied science. So it's used in tracking, in robotics, in econometrics, absolutely everywhere. Okay, so I will present in particular later on towards the end of this talk, I will present an application to robotics. Okay, so how are we going to do inference for state space model? Well, one thing you could do, I mean, you could say, well, this thing is somehow just a particular case of what I've considered before with the extremely high dimensional latent variable, and I could reuse the kind of tricks I presented before, but that doesn't scale well, and those methods don't work in this scenario. So we need to have something a little bit more clever, cleverer than this. Okay, so we're going to first say, well, first thing we're going to do is try to understand, forget about any approximation, how do you perform inference in latent variable when you have such structure? Okay, this is not a state space model. Okay. So when I was having independent observation, it was very simple, because if I wanted to do inference about the latent variable zt given all the observation available, it was simplifying to the posterior distribution of zt given the observation xt, because zt has absolutely zero impact on the other observation, and then I just applying the base rule. Here it's much more complicated because of this kind of the fact that essentially if ZT is going to have an impact on all subsequent observations that arise. The structure of the posterior is a little bit more complicated. Essentially, it's defined, if you want, what we're going to compute is we're going to compute what's so-called the optimal filter, which is the posterior distribution theta of ZT given x1, x2, xt. So here, I apologize, a little typo. So some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with optimal filtering when you have linear Gaussian state space model, in which case the optimal filter is nothing but a Gaussian distribution whose parameters are given by the Kalman filter. Now, if you're this kind of nonlinear, non-Gaussian scenario, it's much more complicated. But what you know is that this kind of optimal filter follows some kind of recursion, which is given by this expression, actually. So how do you have this? So the filtering distribution, if you have the filtering distribution at time t-1 and you want to compute the filtering distribution at time t, well, what you have to do, you have to multiply by this term here, which corresponds to prior time, essentially conditional density of the observation, integrate over zt-1 and renormalize everything. Okay, so that's the, you can easily check, it's just a simple sequential application of the Bayes rule. On the denominator of this expression is nothing but the predictive distribution of xt given the previous observation. Okay, so it's a little bit painful, maybe notationally, but just you have to keep in mind that there's a way to perform inference about the latent state given the observation, except that in this case, you cannot do it in parallel, you have to do it sequentially. Okay? And similarly, once you've done this calculation of this kind of optimal filter that capture all the information you have of ZT, you have about ZT given the past observation x1 to xt, you can also evaluate the log likelihood function. And once more, there's no miracle. There's no miracle in the sense that the moment you're going to deal with complicated model, whenever you have some kind of non-linearity, non-Gaussianity, some neural net appearing in your model, then you cannot compute any of these things analytically. So you are going to have to use numerical techniques. Okay. So the way to address that, what is the equivalent, if you want, of imbalance sampling for state space model? It's particle filtering. So particle filtering, what it does is that assume I give you an approximation of the filter at time t-1, that is the posterior distribution of zt-1 given all the observation I've observed so far, as an empirical measure. Okay, so it's given by a kind of, we call it a collection of particles. Okay. What I want to do is essentially come up with a mechanism which is going to, sequential mechanism, which is going to deliver to me at time t an approximation of the posterior distribution of zt given the observation x1, x2, xt. Okay. So the way I was proceeding when I was doing it for the simple independent variable setup, remember it was based on importance sampling. Okay. So here is the same thing. So it's a bit complicated, but it's exactly the same thing. Essentially, you're introducing at each time step an importance density Q phi, which are going to somehow is a way allows you to explore the space. Okay, and then you introduce some kind of importance weight, which is a way that allows you to correct for the discrepancy between the target distribution, the posterior distribution you're interested in, and the thing you're sampling from. Okay, so you play with this equation. The previous recursion I had given you before. The previous recursion I had given you before, well, there was one way to rewrite it, which is essentially that once you have the filtering distribution at t-1, well, you can say that you can, what you're going to do, you can rewrite it as a distribution Q phi, you're going to sample from, and then you're going to reweight everything using the importance weight W theta phi. Okay, so how it's going to work, instead of looking at this equation, it's better to understand what it does numerically. It's very simple. So you are at time, you are basically at time t. What is available to you for the time being is an approximation of filtering distribution of the, which is given by some kind of collection of particle. You sample forward using some kind of importance distribution Q phi, and you compute the resulting importance weight. Okay. That gives you an approximation of the predictive likelihood of the observation. And then we're going to combine all this approximation and approximation of the log likelihood, as well as an approximation of the filtering distribution at time t. And this thing is given by a weighted sum. It's a weighted empirical measure. Okay. What you do here at this stage, there's a key step that is introduced to the particle filter, which is to say you're resampling capital N time from this weighted empirical measure, so as to obtain a new collection of particles which are unweighted. So what does it do, this thing? So here, when you do your calculation, it's well known in the particle filtering literature, you're going to have particles which are high weight, okay, the weight is very, say, close to 1, and particles that are weight very close to 0. So what you say, well, the rationale is particles which have low weights, there's no need to keep on putting some computational effort, focusing computational effort on them, so you should kill them somehow. Whereas particles with high weight, we should replicate them so that basically they seem to be in promising region of the space. So we should try to replicate them so that in the subsequent time step, we will explore this region of the space better. So this is what we are doing. So we are resampling capital N times from this kind of weighted empirical measure. Okay. So now, the key thing with that on this path, if you not follow all these details because you're not familiar with particle filter, but the key thing, the key problem with this thing, more exactly when we're going to come to use kind of like computing likelihood function on gradient, is that this is somehow requires sampling from a discrete measure. Okay, so it's an atomic measure with n weight. So essentially, it's a kind of non-smooth operation. And that's going to be really problematic for what I want to achieve later on. All right. So now, first, the good news. So if you do this kind of algorithm that looks very much like what we had done before for independent data, except that you have to do it sequentially. So you do sampling, you weight your particle, and because you're having the kind of particle filter context, you have to resample, and then you keep on sampling, weight, resample, and so on and so forth. So the good news about that is that it provides you an estimate of the log likelihood, okay? The likelihood estimate, which is exponential of this approximation, is unbiased, okay? And it has good properties. That is, the variance, the relative variance of your estimate is actually enjoys good property. In particular, it doesn't blow up exponentially fast with time. But as soon as you know n is of order t, it grows only linearly with time. So this is one of the remarkable properties of particle filter. This resampling step I've basically used helps you to mitigate reduce the variance of your estimate of the log likelihood compared to standard impedance sampling. Okay. So now I've got this estimate of the log likelihood. The estimate of the likelihood itself is unbiased. How do I use that so as to do inference about the parameter theta? Well, I could do the same thing I've been doing in statistics, what people like doing, that is to plug this kind of estimate of the likelihood, some kind of MTMT algorithm, but it's really too expensive. Okay. So what else could I do? Well, what about using this kind of variational inference? Okay. Well, variational inference, remember that it's based on computing this kind of evidence lower bound. So what I'm telling you is the good thing about the particle filter is the particle filter provides a non-biased estimate of the likelihood, okay? So in particular, the expectation of the log likelihood estimate under the law of the particle filter is an evidence lower bound, okay? So that's quite nice. So I can define, so especially for variational inference, what I'm telling you is you can define a valid evidence lower bound for time series using a particle filter, which is quite nice. People have done that before, including me and other people in the group of David Bly and the group of Frank Wood. This is nice because we know that the difference between the evidence lower bound and the true log likelihood is directly related to the relative variance of the likelihood estimate. But I show you that the relative variance of the likelihood estimate scales much better for particle filter than for standard impedance sampling. So if you use this kind of idea, you're going to obtain in a variational inference context, you're going to obtain an elbow which is quite tight, much tighter than using standard techniques. So that's nice, okay? But there's a big problem. So what is the big problem is that, well, when you have this elbow, you maximize it using stochastic gradient, usually. So you need to have access to unbiased gradient estimate of the elbow, okay? So that's what you like to do. But if you try to compute an unbiased gradient estimator of the elbow when which has been computed from a particle filter, the estimate you obtain are from very high variance. Okay, so what's the problem? Why do you obtain very, very high variance estimate? Well, simply because the resampling operation you use in the particle filter, when you implement it on a computer, it involves sampling each time n simply n integer variable from some kind of discrete distribution. You cannot use the standard trick so as to follow the variants which are known as the reparameterization trick. You have to use what we call score or reinforced type estimate to compute the gradient. And these gradient estimates suffer from very, very high variance. Okay, so that's really problematic. Okay. So what people have done is they say, well, okay, so if I try to compute a gradient that is really a true unbiased gradient estimate of the elbow, it has too high variance. So what about just dropping the term which are high variance for my gradient and hope for the best? Okay. And it turned out for some model, it can kind of work okay, but it's perhaps not quite clear what are the failure modes of such ideas. So what I'm showing in the next slide is actually this kind of strategy, which is just, well, you know what? When you have this kind of unbiased gradient estimate, just drop the term which are too high variance, okay? On hopefully the kind of bias that is incurred is not going to be too large. It can actually fail quite badly. Okay, so why can it fail quite badly? Well, here are some kind of a few results. So if you do this kind of approximation to your gradient estimate, where the problem is that even if you have an enormous number of particles, so you know that if you had an enormous number of particles, actually the elbow you would compute would converge toward the true log likelihood. Okay, but if basically, so in particular, you would expect as well as under regularity condition that the elbow gradient would converge basically to the gradient of the true log likelihood. But this is not what happens at all. What happens is that this converges to this expression, okay, in probability, your gradient estimate, whereas the true gradient is given by this expression. So this is nothing Fisher identity. So it's not important, basically, the exact expression you obtain, but what you see is that they differ. They look very similar, okay, when you look at it at first glance. But here, what you have that appears is essentially the distribution of zt minus 1 on zt given the observation till time t, whereas here is the observation of zt minus 1 on zt given the observation till capital T, the whole set of observation. So essentially, if you're in a scenario where the so-called filtering distribution differs significantly from this kind of what we call often the smoothing distribution, then the bias that is incurred by this kind of approximation can be very, very significant. So in a sense, it's not satisfactory because you have this very nice mechanism to define a tight elbow. Okay, so that's good. So particle filter allows you to compute a tight elbow. But when it comes to maximizing this elbow, which is what we need to do to perform inference, we cannot. We cannot because we cannot compute low variance gradient estimate which are reliable. So that's actually problematic. Okay. So what was the other possibility, other things I could have been doing? Okay. So remember when I looked at the independent observation scenario, I discussed three things. There was this kind of MCMC approach, which is too expensive, forget about it. There was this variational approach, which I've just reviewed here. But the last approach was this simple approach where essentially you were using some kind of common random seed, obtaining a smooth an estimate of the whole likelihood surface on maximizing that. It was expensive, but why not trying to see what happens when you try to use this idea in particle filter? Well, okay. So trick before, when we were in the independent observation case, we are using this kind of reparametrization trick, obtaining sample from the impedance density by transforming through some continuously differentiable mapping parameterized by phi some normal random variable u. Okay, we are fixing the random seed and we are maximizing this simulated likelihood function. Okay, now can you do the same thing for particle filter? Well, you can, but in a sense, you can actually use the same thing using simple reparametrization trick plus common random number, but this doesn't give you a continuously differentiable log likelihood function estimate. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is, once more, the culprit is resampling. Because resampling, even if you fix all the random seed in your algorithm, it is possible that when you vary theta and phi just a little bit, then the particles that end up being resampled are very different from the one. So if you had selected resample, say, particle x3 using some value theta phi, and if you modify theta by theta plus delta theta, you might end up picking particle, resample particle, which is not x3, but say x17. Okay, so you end up, what it provides is that this kind of discontinuity in this kind of resampling stage, okay, it leads to estimate of the log likelihood function which are not smooth. So here is an illustration. So just pick a simple linear Gaussian space model. So this is the true log likelihood function you obtain. And here, this is an estimate of the actually estimated log likelihood surface if you were to fix this kind of, using this kind of common random number, fixed random seed strategy. And we see that basically it provides a likelihood surface which is absolutely not smooth and differentiable. So in particular, you cannot plug that in some kind of essentially gradient optimization procedure, because it just return nonsensical results. So I give you here, this is an illustration of the gradient of the log likelihood, so of the true log likelihood. Okay, and here this is what you would obtain for the gradient if you are using this kind of approximation of the log likelihood function using a common random number. It just doesn't work at all. Okay, so it's a well-known problem. So people know that in statistics for a very long time. Okay, so they've looked at it in statistics and econometrics for about 20 years. Okay, so there was the first paper by a colleague of mine, Mike Pitts. So he managed to get some kind of, to fix the problem in the scenario where the dimension of the latent state is 1. Okay, so that's nice, but unfortunately it's a nice solution. But unfortunately, we would like to be able to consider state space model whose dimension of the state is superior to 1. So that's not quite satisfactory. On statistics, there were actually a few extensions that were proposed. So there was other work in econometrics that I'm not mentioning here, but that do not provide a satisfactory answer. There were extensions as well of trying to come up with some kind of mechanism to obtain some kind of differentiable estimate of the log likelihood surface, but there was problem. I mean, it works for some. You manage to get some smoother estimate of log likelihood, but it's only piecewise continuous or piecewise differentiable. It's still actually problematic. Okay. Now, people in machine learning and robotics also looked more recently at this problem. Okay. So in particular, there's a wall. If you Google on the internet, like you Google differentiable particle filter, you're going to find actually quite a few papers where people say they come up with essentially a way to remove this kind of non-differentiability problem from resampling, so as to obtain somehow estimate based on the particle filter which are differentiable. Okay, so there's a work by Shonowski, but if you look at detail, actually it turns out that those techniques are not quite rigorous, and they still ignore terms arising from resampling. There's more work as well, similarly, where they provide some kind of smoother version of resampling, but it still doesn't work in the sense that they still, to compute their gradient, they still need to make approximation and ignore terms. And more recently, there's Kevin Murphy, that you might know from the famous book on machine learning, who also proposed an attempt to come up with this kind of way to come up with some kind of smooth version of resampling using set transformers. Unfortunately, they report in their paper that they cannot backprop through time, so that fortunately this technique is not really applicable so as to minimize kind of complicated loss function. Okay, so what I'm going to propose to do here is to try to address this problem using optimal transport. Okay, so what is really complicated, what is really problematic in what I'm currently doing is that I have some particles that are reweight to approximate some probability measure, and then I resample capital N times from this weighted empirical measure, and this is the source of all my troubles. So is there a way that might come at a kind of approximation cost to get around this, like, you know, having to sample from the discrete measure, which is not an operation which is differentiable? So to do that, we're going to basically rely on optimal transport. Okay, so basis of optimal transport. So I give you two probability measure, alpha and beta. Okay, then the square 2 Wasserstein metric is essentially defined by, okay, so this is the minimum of the expectation of the square norm between Z and Z dash, where basically over all distribution P, which are such that Z admit a distribution alpha and Z dash admit distribution beta. Okay, so that's the definition of the square 2 Wasserstein metric. Okay. Now, any probability distribution that basically belong to, that is a joint distribution with marginal alpha and beta, if you have access to any probability distribution of this form, you can use this probability distribution to transport alpha to beta. Okay, so that is what I'm telling you, say, is that beta is, because P is assumed to be a joint distribution with marginal alpha beta, so you can write that beta as the integral of essentially a Z of this joint distribution. Okay, and now you decompose the joint distribution as its marginal in alpha times this kind of conditional distribution of Z dash given Z. Okay, so what I've shown you is that basically now, if you have access to P, then you have access to its conditional distribution. So now if I give you some sample alpha from Z from alpha, and then you basically sample Z dash from this kernel P, then you're going to have marginally a sample from beta. Okay, so that's nice. There's some result in the literature that tells you that the distribution that minimize this basically square 2 Wasserstein metric. Okay, so this is a distribution in particular which has a marginal alpha and beta. Well, not only that this property that you can obviously, because it's an element of this set, then it can transform alpha to beta, but it has a specific structure. That is that the conditional distribution of the minimizing argument here, okay, it's a probability distribution which is entirely degenerate. Okay, so that's essentially what it tells you is that if you have Z which is distributed according to alpha, then you apply the mapping T of Z that define the conditional distribution of Z dash given Z, the degenerate conditional distribution of Z dash given Z, and you obtain a sample from beta. Okay, so that's very standard result in optimal transport. And what it suggests is that we should be able to use this kind of stuff for particle filter, because essentially after this kind of sampling step in particle filter, we have an approximation of this distribution. Okay, and what we are interested in is approximation of the filtering distribution at time t. So if we basically, so this is the high level idea, if we could compute the kind of optimal transport between these two distributions alpha and beta and differentiate it, instead it would be an alternative to using all this kind of resampling type idea. which are non-differentiable. So that's the kind of rationale behind it. So we don't want to use this. We want to do some kind of base update, but we don't want to use using this kind of I weight my particle, I resample to approximate that. I want to kind of come up with some kind of deterministic mapping that's going to do the same job. Okay. In practice, what do? You have approximation of your measure alpha and beta n. Okay. So this is really what the particle that you after your sampling step, and this is what you'd like to have after your resampling step. Okay. So what you do is well, you're gonna have a few problems. So the first problem, I would like to apply this kind of strategy I've mentioned before, that is compute a kind of optimal transport between the measure and then apply it. But it's really problematic because, well, see, I didn't have the measure alpha and beta completely. I just have Monte Carlo approximation of that. On top of that, the optimal transport is really very expensive to compute. So finding the minimizing argument of the Wasserstein 2 metric is really complicated. So that's the first problem, and it's not differentiable. And the second problem is that, well, when I deal with measures which are atomic like that, or not measures which have density, it is not true anymore that the minimizing argument of the minimizing argument define a conditional distribution, which is actually a degenerate measure. That is, it's not given by delta mass. Okay, so that's problematic. Okay, so how do we address those two problems? The first thing is that we say we're not going to compute optimal transport. We're going to use basically the entropy regularized optimal transport. So this is faster to compute, can be parallelizable, and in particular, and it's differentiable. So this is good news. Okay. And the second thing is that where the minimizing argument of this kind of entropy regularized optimal transport, where is similarly not, it doesn't return a probability distribution, which is such that the conditional distribution of z dash given s is degenerate. But what we're going to do is going to do some kind of local averaging using what we call this kind of ensemble transform. Okay. So if you combine all these ideas, you obtain a differentiable particle filter. So that's my claim. So my claim is to say, well, there's a way, a principal way to modify resampling so as to obtain a differentiable mechanism. Okay. Okay. So I'm not gonna go. We are running out of time. Just I want to say that this approach is motivated by theoretical results. So what we can show is that if I use this kind of mechanism that is really not, instead of using just sample, weight, resample, I use the mechanism where basically I've got the distribution where I've sampled my particle, I've weighted them, and then I use this kind of entropy regularized optimal transport to build a new kind of smooth resampling mechanism. Then it comes with convergence guarantee, and in particular, you can basically tune the parameter of your regularized optimal transport so that it provides you with consistent approximation of the filtering distribution of the log likelihood estimate, which is quite nice. Okay. So how does it work? So let's revisit the kind of simple toy example I was presenting to start with. Okay. So remember, it was kind of linear Gaussian space model. In this case, if you do, so obviously in this case, I know the solution. So that's the true log likelihood. Okay. Here, this is what I would have obtained if I was running a simple particle filter using comma random number. This is what it gives you. And here, this is what you obtain for the estimated log likelihood function. If now you use command random number and you use this kind of differentiable resampling scheme that is arising from optimal transport. Okay, so it's much smoother. This is how it looks when I look at the gradient of the resulting likelihood surface. So this is the true, essentially, the gradient vector field. This is really when you standard particle filter. On here, this is what you're basically obtaining using this kind of new differentiable particle filter that use resampling based on entropy regularized optimal transport. Okay. So, I mean, you'll find in the paper quite a lot of experiments. that shows that actually this procedure provide more precise estimate of the parameter compared to standard approach. Okay, so I'm going to skip that. And what I like to say, emphasize, is our approach is more computationally intensive than what is currently available. However, even if you take on the commercial complexity, that is, you use more particles for standard techniques than what we're using, we're still doing better. And it's normal because the current method suffer from a non-vanishing bias. So they could use a zillion or 1 billion particle. There's still a vanishing bias that is basically inherent to this method, to this methodology. So we do not suffer from that. So I've got applications for polyphonic music that I'm going to skip, but basically on some kind of fairly high dimensional state space model, we are able to kind of improve the performance instead of polyphonic music prediction. I just want to finish with an application, which is an application in robotics. So, so this is actually the application. So I'm not a specialist of this application, so I'm afraid I won't be able to really answer any specific detail about it. My PhD student would be is much more aware of the details than me. But this is an application. This application I'm going to describe has motivated all this recent work in machine learning on the introduction of some kind of pseudo-differentiable particle filter. Okay, so really what it is that you have some kind of state space model, a latent process that describes some kind of location and orientation of the robot. Okay, this robot is driven by some control that you're aware, because it's you that input those controls to the robot. And what you get basically as observation is some kind of video sequence. So each time you get an image. Okay, and really what you like to do is you like to encode this kind of high dimensional observation using some kind of neural network of parameter theta. And yet you like to be able to localize the robot properly. So if you want, essentially what you're trying to do is to kind of come up with some kind of sensible encoding of this really high dimensional observation to know where to look at when you want to localize the robot. Okay. So in this case, the loss function is actually quite funny. So the loss function is that they have access to true trajectories that basically they've run in some lab and so on. They have access to true trajectory of the robot. And what they do, they look at the particle filter estimate of the your estimate of the location of the robot, and you try to minimize the discrepancy between the true location on your particle filter estimate. So essentially, what you have is that this thing is going to be it's the loss function you're going to consider, and it depends implicitly on the parameter theta of your encoding because this is the parameter theta of the encoding define the observation equation for the particle filter. Okay, so that's quite nice. Okay, so obviously this thing, the problem is because here you have a particle filter estimate, it's non-differentiable if you were to use this kind of standard particle filter. Hence, this is why we use this kind of, there's been a lot of interest in developing some kind of differentiable version of this loss function so as to optimize the parameter theta. Okay. So here, this is essentially the kind of result we obtain on some of the loss. So just look at the bold curve if you want to. So here, this is if you use this kind of, you were just using the standard particle filter and you were dropping the resampling term, like what people have done quite a few times in the literature. Here, this is a version that was proposed by other people in robotics, where they have a small twist on the resampling, so make it to try to get around this non-differentiability of resampling, but it's still actually, as I told you, it's not quite differentiable yet. There are terms that are ignored, so it improves our standard particle filter, but it's still not quite right. And here, this is essentially what you obtain using this kind of differentiable particle filter. Okay. So this is further results between the differentiable particle filter, this kind of standard particle filter, and this kind of soft resampling particle filter. And we see that this kind of mechanism allow us to provide actually more, define more better observation model, and hence we get more accurate estimate of the state. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap up here. So essentially, what I've been trying to convey here is that where it is possible to use particle filter essentially in a variational framework, for example, to define an evidence lower bound, and it is possible to, you could use that also in this kind of some robotics type example, where it's not, you're not interested in an evidence lower bound, but you have essentially loss function which are dependent on particle filter estimate. But these loss they are a big problem when you're trying to compute the gradients of such loss. Either in the case of the elbow, it's really high variance and it doesn't work, or in the context where we have just like kind of this mean square error that people use in robotics, it's not differentiable. Okay. So one way to sort out this, to solve this problem is to come up some kind of differentiable version of resampling, and we achieve that by using this kind of regularized optimal transport combined to the reparametrization trick. So it's end-to-end differentiable, which is quite nice. As I said, there's a cost to pay. So in particular, the combinational cost is over the n square for this type of techniques compared to where n is the number of particles versus n over the n for the methods which are currently available. But I do emphasize that even if you were trying to increase the number of particles to n square for the current method, so as to balance the computational complexity, it doesn't solve any problem. They could actually even use an infinite number of particles. Those techniques suffer from non-vanishing bias as n goes to infinity. And for some model, it's going to work fine. And for some model, it's not going to work fine, and you don't know when it works or it doesn't work, which is actually quite problematic. It's not quite reliable, actually. So in this respect, it's I don't think the additional cost is that problematic, given it comes with some guarantees. At least all the techniques. What I argue is the method is actually more reliable. Additionally, we conjecture, I mean, the field of computational optimal transport has basically seen there's been an explosion of nice work in this area over the past 7 years now, and in particular. People have come up with ways to accelerate the so-called SINCORN algorithm, which is at the core of the differentiable resampling algorithm we propose. So I do believe that we could additionally speed up our algorithm. Finally, something which is perhaps not satisfactory yet is that the result we get, the kind of convergence result we get, are a bit not quite sharp, it is fair to say. But we expect that actually it should be possible to get much sharper bounds. So this is a work in progress. Thank you.
Maybe I have a little question. What are the variational parameters of your algorithm? Is it just the optimal transport, or also the importance distribution?
No, it's actually, so we don't, although we could do it, the regularization parameter we use in regularized optimal transport is not a parameter we learn. It is fixed. Okay. So what we learn is the parameter of the distribution, of the proposal distribution, when we are in a VAE type framework. But it could be, so for example, in the last example I was presenting, it was not actually a VAE type model. It was a model where we were learning really some kind of encoding of the high-dimensional observation sequence.
Okay. You run the HMM model, but also the importance distribution for sampling particles.
Yeah, we can learn them, yeah. So it depends on the application, but yes. We have applications. So in the VRNN, for example, we do learn those parameters, the parameters of the proposal. Fine. It's not the case in the last scenario. It's not the case. We are not doing this. We're just learning some kind of encoding of the observation that maps us from this kind of video sequence to some kind of much lower representation of this high-dimensional observation sequence.
Okay, thank you very much.